Bell Park, for instance, there's some wonderful, great streets, but there's other real questionable ones. If you don't know the area and you're not driving through, how do you know? How can you be confident you're putting a client onto a good property?
Welcome to Smart Selling Steps with Cardinia Property, where you'll get the insider insights on the best way to get your property sold in the current real estate market.
Welcome to Cardinia Property's podcast, Smart Selling Steps. We are chatting today with Vicky Whittaker from Elite Buyer Agents. Welcome, Vicky.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Tell me about your dogs. You got two?
I've got two, yeah.
Yeah? What's their names?
Oscar and Toby.
Have you been out walking or running with them this morning?
I've been with them running there.
Yeah. Are they faster than you or are you faster than them?
I'm faster than Toby. I have to go and pick him up halfway down the road now. He's getting
Right.
a little bit fat and old.
Oh, how old and what type
Well,
of
he's
dog
only
is he?
5, but he's a Kelpie Maremma and
Right.
they're not very good.
Right. But
when they
they'd
get
be
older.
good buddies for you.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, awesome. Do they like this heat? It's really hot out.
No.
No, they're good. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been out this morning looking at properties for people
Yes.
on behalf of your clients. Obviously, that's what you do. Tell me in your words, what is the role of a buyer's agent or a buyer's advocate?
So the role of an advocate is working with investor clients and homeowners. So investors, we will sit with them and work through the goals and what they're looking to achieve in the property journey, the best properties that are going to fit their budget, best asset type for the budget to give them the goals of the growth that they want, as well as the rental yield. Then we go out and source the property. So we're still looking on realestate.com and Domain, but also we're calling agents and looking for off markets. The main part is the assessment of the property, the working out what we believe to be a market value, and then the negotiation.
Okay. So what's the difference between when you work for a owner-occupier or like a family as not an investor?
Owner-occupier, obviously there's a lot of emotion involved, so we go through a much more in-depth client brief of what they're looking for. So we're working towards meeting their long-term, what they want in a property that's going to suit their needs in the long term. So the kids growing or they're downsizing, things like that.
When you're working with the investors, to go
Yep.
back a step, you spoke about helping them achieve their financial goals. Is that something that you work with like a finance person with, or like is that something that you take on yourself? How does that work?
Generally, clients come to us when they've met with the finance broker and they've put a strategy together for their wealth creation. So we're looking then at properties that's got to have a minimum historical growth of a certain amount. So then we'd be confident it's going to continue to perform at that level or above.
So you would do all that background research
We do
on behalf
all
of the buyer.
on behalf of the buyer for every property that we shortlist.
So they would give you the brief, then you'll go and do all the background research
Yeah.
and a lot of figures and numbers, I imagine.
Yep.
And do they come to you with what they need those figures and numbers to be?
Yeah. So we go through a full cash flow document before we even start the search. So, and because then it's only certain assets that are going to meet that. So it might be a 3-bed, 1-bath because they don't have to have that amount of rent. But generally, because of the way interest rates are at the moment, it's sort of changed what we're looking for.
Yes.
Having that extra bathroom is going to give them that little bit more rent. They're going to pay a little bit more, but they'll get a bit more in capital growth. So it's really finding that fine balance between that long-term growth and also the rental yield.
So you'd have to be pretty across all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. How do you learn? How do you learn that initially, or is there ongoing education
Just
that you do?
ongoing education and
Yeah.
just watching the market and looking at the growth of properties. So that'll be why sometimes I'll go through a property and although it looks great, the floor plan flows, it's got a great outdoor space, it's presented well, it's on a really good street. Then when you actually delve deep into it, the growth perhaps on that street has not been good enough. And there's generally a reason for that. And it could have been a past neighbour or you're too close to a freeway. There's a reason. We've got to have what we call investment grade stock.
Okay. So I'm generalising here, but I would imagine that there would be people out there that don't actually know like how to engage you or how you ever like what you bring to the table. So that's really interesting information. How do you become a buyer's advocate?
Me personally, I became one 12 years ago in Melbourne.
do you do the same training as a real estate agent, or is there
so I
specific
hold
train?
a full real estate license.
Yep.
Generally, it's shadowing and learning the market. I've been in property for over 25 years with property management and selling
Making
in the
yourself
UK.
sound old
Yeah,
there.
I know. And I shadowed someone for 4 or 5 years and learned everything from then. Since then, there's lots of courses out there for advocates to do. A lot of the courses involve how you market yourself, not
Yes.
actually doing the job.
Yes.
You've got to be on the job to learn it.
So it's a bit like if you were a sales associate in a real estate world,
Yeah.
or if you were a property valuer, you would do your training and then go and do the cadetship, which is that on-the-job training.
Yeah.
So really, when people are, if they've decided that they want to use the services of a buyer's advocate, what questions should they ask?
Experience. What have you bought? How long have you been in the industry for a start? That's the main thing. And I think age, although I've shown my age, I think age does become a thing. I think you bring with you a wealth of knowledge just in general life,
Yes.
as well as, because I know that when I first started, I probably could have never gone out on my own the way I am now, because I was a lot younger.
Yes.
So
Well-
definitely experience knowing the area. You've got to be on the ground, I believe, in the locations that you're buying in. You've got to have the relationships with the agents. And it's being on the ground, like not just buying these properties just from a video from an agent, and not actually looking at the surrounding area and the street and the drive into the street and what the
Yeah.
neighbours look like.
It's
and
interesting, isn't
the
it?
demographic of the location. Like Bell Park, for instance, there's some wonderful, great streets, but there's other real questionable ones. If you don't know the area and you're not driving through, how do you know? How can you be confident you're putting a client onto a good property?
It's interesting. I've found that maybe especially since COVID times, it's been exacerbated, this want of real life services. So what you're talking about there is not doing things on video or just in the digital world, actually getting out there and having a feel for the property itself, but also the location and all the other bits and pieces that come into play. So I know that we've chatted recently around a family that was moving from interstate into Geelong. So that's something that they are obviously unable to do themselves.
Yeah.
What are the key things that people want you to do when they employ you? Like if it was a family as opposed to investor, what are they looking for? Are they looking for that research on the area, or what are the other things they're wanting?
It varies. They're really different. So that family, for instance, both working professionals, they knew the area and that they're going to buy in, but they kept coming for opens and just wasting Saturdays, 4-hour drive here, 4-hour drive back, and just looking at properties. Whereas the way we worked went through the brief exactly what they was looking for. I did all the inspections, sent them through the videos, and then they shortlisted from the videos. So they was only looking at properties that they liked the look of. They just then wanted to walk through and get that touch and feel the self.
So it's a time thing.
Yeah.
Am I correct, or I might not be correct me if I'm wrong, in that people have a misconception that the role of a buyer's advocate is to get the property for the cheapest amount of money? Talk to that space for me.
They think we're miracle workers and we can buy everything for a bargain. But the reality is, I mean, there's something wrong with the property if you're going to buy it 100 grand under what it's worth. If we think it's only worth 100 grand less than what it's advertised for, then we either try and get it or we walk away and we find something else. There's a reason. And you're buying a quality property. You've got to pay for a quality property. And that's why we do the assessments and we use comparables and recent comparables, and we talk the client through why we believe this is worth what it is, and we give them a range. If we can get it in this market value range, we've bought well.
Yeah.
If we can't, we walk away.
And that would be, I imagine, different for investors versus the
Owner
family buyer,
occupiers.
because as you mentioned before, you've got that emotion involved.
Yeah.
Whereas if they find a house that might happen to be, we call them emotional buyers, that might be close to the school they want to go to or around the corner from grandma or whatever, then they'll generally pay a little bit more for that.
Yeah.
Whereas the investors, I imagine, will
We
have
have
just
a
to
limit.
walk away, and they don't really mind because another one.
It's around the corner.
Yeah. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. So when you're looking at properties on behalf of your clients, what are some of the red flags that, give it a cross and takes it off the list to, and then the flip side, what will put it onto a short list before you give them over to the clients?
So with an investor, you'll be natural light, good flowing floor plan, flat, regular shaped block, nice street, quiet street. We don't buy on main roads. No train line running through the back. No freeway at the back of the garden. They're your majority of the things. The quality of the build. Obviously, at the moment, like with the minimum standards for rentals and things. So we are checking all of that. So we've got to make sure.
Yeah.
And each client's different. There's some clients that are willing to buy something that doesn't meet minimum standards. They've got the available cash to be able to do it.
Yes.
But a lot of people don't
so
want it.
your
It's gotta
role
be
would
rent
be
ready.
then to decrease the amount of risk involved in purchasing for an investor. Yeah. And then is there things that when you're walking through a property that you're seeing or you're opening cupboards, or what are you doing that gives you some red flags when you're looking for on behalf of families?
On behalf of families, storage. Sometimes you can open wardrobes and they're not a real wardrobe. So we look at that. Again, the natural light, the way the floor plan flows, a smell of a carpet.
Yes. Again, something that you can't, assess
you've
on
obviously
a digital.
noticed because I talk through my videos where I can.
Yes, yeah.
So I will let them know if it pongs a little bit.
Yes,
because perhaps they've got to change, and the general overall maintenance and the presentation of the property as well, and the feel of it. It's nice if someone's going to live there. Does it feel homely? Like some homes you walk in and there's an airy feel about them, or
So I think if you were to conjure up this in your mind, a property that you've been to recently that you thought looked okay via the photos or the marketing, and then you got to the property and it just had a different look, and purely from a physical point of view, not from a feel or a smell, what would be like maybe 4 or 5 things that you would look around and you might say,
bad condition carpets, cracks in the walls, all your fascias, perhaps when they're all, because your gutters are full and they're rusting, and then the fascias become discoloured, rotting windows, smashed windows, broken fly screens. So they all look great on the photos, and then you get there and you go, oh.
Yeah, which is interesting because the answers that you've just said then are not what I expected you to say.
Okay.
So I thought you might have said things like, the house isn't clean, or there's cobwebs, or the windows are dirty.
Yeah.
But do you tend to look past those cosmetic things, or how does that sit?
So I do look past that, and I will note it out in the video. I went to a property a few days ago, and that was a tenanted property, and the presentation wasn't great. And I was doing a video, even though I was talking through the video and explaining to the client it's the tenant, and I know that my client will look at that video and will not see past the way that was presented.
So it's that first impression really still, isn't it?
Yeah.
So even though the property might have got past the start line in relation to the people have said, yes, please go and have a look at it, or you've said you've put it on your short list. When you get there, it can be a completely different scenario.
Story. Yeah.
So in relation to exactly what we're talking about, that presentation and the first impression, do you think that makes a difference in the final sale negotiation?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it really makes a difference on a dollar's point of view.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you feel like, from remembering that your client is the buyer, could you use that as a tool to negotiate the price down perhaps?
If that tenant was staying, it would depend how that was.
Yes.
Each situation's different, but I definitely do feel presentation makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Okay. So in a couple of our other podcasts, we've had like carpet cleaning, window cleaning, garden maintenance, and other, people that can help out in that space. So I'm hearing that you would recommend tapping into those professionals, or
Absolutely.
if you haven't got the budget to do it from a seller's point of view, I know your client is the buyer, but from a seller's point of view, it does make a difference.
Yeah.
What about property styling? Like if you walk in, like I know that that's a big in vogue at the moment. Do you walk into a property and does that make a massive difference for you, or?
Overall, not me, because I look at things a bit different, but I know to the client it makes it, because they can envisage someone living there, whether it's a tenant, they're putting a tenant in there or not.
Yes.
They can see that it can become a home. Walking through a vacant property
Is more just like the property versus the home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I always think that the property is a bit more unemotional.
Yeah.
And the home is that emotional, where you bring up your family and have all your celebrations and whatnot. But it's interesting to distinguish between, so the title of this podcast is What Buyers Want. Mm-hmm. So you just distinguished just now between what you as a buyer's advocate want versus what the actual buyers want. So if you were to take your work hat off and you were just with your sister or your best friend and you weren't doing your job on the weekend and they were wanting to buy a house, what do you reckon you would advise them to?
Styled.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Because you can feel it. You can imagine yourself living there. You can't imagine yourself living in an empty room.
Yes. And clean and just that. And
Nice smells.
Yeah. Yeah. What about the outside of the property?
That's a big thing as well, because that's maintenance. So when you walk out and there's cobwebs over, or when people leave dog poo in the back garden, or the grass is a bit too long, like longer than it should be if you're having an inspection.
Yes.
Yeah, it makes
all
a big difference.
Makes a difference.
Yeah, because again, you've got to envisage yourself sitting on your back deck and having a glass of wine.
Yes, it's all about that. And that's what I always say when we're showing buyers, when I'm talking to our clients, the seller, is I say that the buyers not necessarily looking at your grubby couch. They're trying to imagine how their couch looks in the space. So if you can declutter and have everything clean, it allows them to visualise, the buyers to visualise them, not only their furniture but themselves living and creating a home. Have you got like a really funny story about when you might have been looking at a property and something really awkward might have happened? I'll tell you one while you're thinking.
Go on then.
So Jackson, my husband, as you know, his dad, he's in real estate in Warrnambool, was taking a buyer through a property and knocked on the door. It was a tenanted property and they set it up. No one was there. And then so he went, it was in the country, went around the side to see whether he could get in any way. And one of the windows was open, popped himself up into the window and there was two buyers making some sweet love. Have you had any awkward? No. Like, I've had one where I've had someone answer the door like nearly starkers.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
No, I've not had that.
But no. Okay, so that's definitely not what buyers want, isn't it? No. Okay. So if there's people out there that are unsure about whether they want to, use the services of a buyer's advocate, what would you say to them?
Have a chat and just see what benefits it's going to do, like in terms of saving you time, getting the right one, like we do the due diligence on the property as well, like especially for investors, obviously getting that right. Not every property is going to perform over the long term, is not in a good position. And homeowners, just making sure you're going to get it for a good price, particularly like first homeowners, they don't really know what they're doing.
Yes.
Sort of holding them through the steps. I worked with a young girl about 2 years ago now, but first time she'd ever done it. So just having someone there on a side to have a completely unbiased opinion,
Yes.
that was really big for her.
Some people I've spoken to worry that especially if they're selling and buying at the same time, that they're having to pay two different services. Like, I'm a big fan of, wrapping yourself up and using, as you said, the experience and the professionalism of whoever's in that particular field. Do you find that you're mostly working with people who are buying and selling at the same time, or is it mostly investors, or is it very general?
Very general, yeah. At the moment, I'm really investor heavy.
Yes.
Prior to 2 months ago, I was all owner occupiers.
Yeah, okay. Interestingly enough, with the investors, we've had lots of investors that we've been back on the buyer inquiry of late. Are your investors interstate investors, or they?
All of them.
Yeah. So why do you think they're coming back into Victoria after maybe not being around for a little while?
I think they're starting to, obviously, a lot of good investors are following a trend, and they know that Victoria's at the bottom of the property clock, and we know we're at the bottom of a market.
Yeah, I reckon we're just about going up.
I think we are.
Yeah.
And a savvy investor knows it's the time now to take advantage of our next cycle.
Yeah. What about first home buyers?
It's first home buyers. Like, if you're going to get on the market, get on now.
Yeah,
because that will stand you in really good stead.
Buying, yeah, and then it's like I think it's a 7-year cycle. Well, that they say that. So in any market, Vicky, what would be your one main tip for buyers out there?
One main tip: do your pricing due diligence.
Okay.
Look back at recent sales in the immediate area of what things have been selling for, and go to open on a weekend, see who is wandering around, how many buyers are going through the properties that you're interested in.
Yes.
And really getting a feel for the market.
So what you're talking about is collecting all the information that you can before making a really big decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then if the buyers want even more information and more due diligence, then they might look to employ someone like yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much for all of your tips today. It's been amazing, and hopefully we'll see you out and about at a property over the weekend.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah.